Namaskar, Nilesh Oak, in another session of Dr. No Shorts, part 3. The quick feedback I have from number of you have told me that you love this short format as well as the long format. And in short formats, you certainly like this 5-minute long videos. Number of you also told me you are okay with 10 minutes and 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, but not to go beyond 20 minutes. What I plan to do for the near future is to limit myself to 5, 10, or 15 minutes. I'll ensure I do not go beyond 15 minutes, and let's see how that works out for you. Do let me know your feedback. So Dr. No Shorts, part 3. In the first part, in this Dr. No Shorts series, we looked at the archaeology evidence for the formation of the Black Sea, which occurred in 5525 BCE, the same year when, or same time we can say, it doesn't have to be exactly same year, same time interval, when Krishna's Dwarka was destroyed by incoming sea waters, okay? And it flooded the city and destroyed the whole city in 5525 BCE. This time we are going to look at archaeology evidence all the way from West Indies. Just for the context and the word Indies, that's how the whole world was looking at India when they were exploring geographically the land, especially Western Europeans. They were not aware of the entire Americas, although Americans in America were aware of it. And when the Christianity decided to exploit the geography, they gave rights to Spain to explore in the western direction and exploit whatever resources they find. And to Portugal, they gave the rights of discovery, whatnot, to explore the eastern direction. So that's how Vasco da Gama from Portugal landed in India. And Columbus went in search of India in the western direction and landed in the Caribbeans. Okay, so Caribbeans is that West Indies area. In recent times, when finally British came to India, brainwashed us in every single front, but also colonized us, colonized our bodies, colonized our land, colonized our minds. Okay, they also took the indentured laborers. Okay, essentially it's a slavery. They took people from India and to work in these fields. Okay, that happened in West Indies. They took them to South Africa. They took them to Fiji Islands, in the Polynesian area, and so on. But today we are going to look at the evidence in support of the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BC, from as far away from India, from Dwarka to West Indies. What that tells us is that this was whatever was happening in that 5525 BC was a global phenomenon. Remember, we looked at the formation of the Black Sea right here. Okay, it was simply not there before the middle of 6th millennium BC, before the time of Mahabharata war. Okay, and we saw how the water from the Atlantic, okay, gushed in. So that raised the levels of the Mediterranean. That levels of Mediterranean is all connected. So Mediterranean increased the water levels in the Aegean Sea. That Aegean Sea waters pushed further into the Sea of Marmara. And here, right at Istanbul, the water pressure was such that it broke through the Bosphorus channel and started pouring the water on the other side into a small lake at that time, which instantaneously turned into a Black Sea, what we know today as a Black Sea. And we saw that evidence. What I'm going to share today, these researchers have also made that connection of their research, their dating of 5525 BCE, and how smoothly it matches with the formation of Black Sea. But let's begin with their evidence. Now, the evidence that I'm going to share is most of it, of course, with other researchers, was collected research by Professor Paul Blanchon, Dr. Paul Blanchon. It so happens that he did this research work, his PhD, at the same place where I did my master's in chemical engineering, that is at the famous University of Alberta in Edmonton, Canada. In fact, at the same time, Now, of course, we did not know each other. We never met. Even to this day, we have not met, although we have communicated with each other. And so he was working in the geology. I was working in chemical engineering and so on. We never met. I became familiar with his research only in 2010. Whereas he has performed this research 20 years before that, like in the early 90s. Many different locations from this Caribbean or West Indies area. Okay, so just make yourself familiar with it. If you need to pause, that's fine. Cayman Islands, Bahamas, Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Croix, Haiti. I mean, all of these places. Okay, let's jump into the evidence. I am not going to take you through the technical details of it. If that is your interest, and I would say you should be interested, okay? If you really want to know, and so that nobody simply fools you by simply saying, oh, this is a peer-reviewed paper, or some famous person or someone with a PhD or some professor at some university has done it, then you should get to the level of understanding this. But that's something we will not able to discuss. I have no intention of discussing in either even 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but frankly, the hour is not enough. Okay, this is based on the coral reef studies, the growth of coral reef and so on. There were 3 specific CRE, catastrophic rise events that Paul Blanchard identified. Okay, the first one, notice, first one meaning we are going back in time and starting from there. So 20,000 years before us. Why 20,000? Of course, that's what the research is. But the point is that 20,000 years before us has a very special significance. That is the time of last glacial maximum. Okay, the coolest temperature that were achieved in the recent past. And after that, the ice started melting, the weather started changing. Okay, and therefore sea levels started rising, and they are rising to our times. Last 20,000 years, sea levels are rising. Okay, directionally speaking. Of course, there are ups and downs. So this 20,000 scale, like 20,000 years of study, has a very special significance. Within that, in Barbados, in West Indies, Paul Blanchard and his team found 3 specific CRE. CRE1, notice its timing. It's at the time, and I am conjecturing it just after Ramayana, 14.2K, that's what? 12,200 BCE. Just after that, I am saying this significant sea level rise took place that possibly might have destroyed, if not completely, partially, Lanka. That's a possibility. Okay, anyways, that's not a subject today. There was a second CRE2 around 11.5, subtract 2000, that takes you to 9000 BCE. This is what you hear everywhere around the world, okay, among archaeoastronomers, among researchers of antiquity, and so on and so forth. Well known, okay, well known, another event. But many people are not aware of it. Many people only think of this event. Many people are not aware of this CRE1. Many people are not aware of this CRE3. And those who are aware of CRE3, if they are in the Mahabharata research space, they don't want to talk about it because it destroys their claim. Okay. In CRE3, 5600 BC plus minus 130 years. What is important, guys, to understand is that 5525 BCE falls into this bracket. So 5600 BC plus minus 100 plus minus 130. What is the significance of that 130 years? Again, in short video like this, it cannot be done. It is a standard error. You have to understand how the research is done. If you do know it, then it's not a surprise to you. If you don't know it, then it is a surprise to you. Too bad. Either you have to up your game, understanding how the research is done, what is the role of a standard error in any type of a quantifiable research like this, and understand it instead of causing confusion, as been done by some recent Mahabharata dating researchers in understanding numbers like these. Okay, so we have a very clear, crisp evidence of a sudden sea level rise of 6.5 meters, 6.5 plus minus 2.5, just let's say 6, the most conservative number there, times 3, like turning meters into feet, we are looking at sudden 20 feet rise. Just imagine what that does. Okay, a very clear, crisp evidence, which coincident with 5525 BCE, the year for the flooding of Krishna's Dwarka. So that's our evidence. But guess what? Now, this is the evidence from West Indies, but it beautifully correlates with the additional evidence that this team found from various places around the world. For example, trying to coordinate what they are seeing in the West Indies, just see how impressive it is. With, for example, Greenland air temperatures, not the Greenland air temperatures today, but Greenland air temperatures in antiquity corresponding to those time scales. And this can be done with the modern science and technology by taking the course, the ice cores from the Greenland ice, and then using different principles such as this is an oxygen isotope, or you can use many other type of isotopes, trying to detect the temperature, trying to see the significant changes. And you can see, let me actually draw the lines. You can see the correspondence of what you're seeing in West Indies with many other parameters that people are measuring from around the world. Okay. So you can almost see something happening, there is the indicator. Okay, there is an indicator that something is going to happen through other records, and then there is that output event in terms of sudden sea level rise, and you can see that for each of these catastrophic rise event. Okay, now this was what I just showed you was at Barbados. But what this Blanchon and team went on to do is explore many different locations in West Indies. Okay, some 8 to 9 locations there. Panama, Barbados, St. Croix, St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Grand Cayman Islands there, South Florida, North Florida. And guess what? The evidence is found everywhere. It's impressive, consistent. Now, the point to remember here is knowing only the sea level rise is not sufficient. You have to also take into account the subsidence of the land. The land actually goes down, and also notice land actually comes up in many different places. Okay, so you have to take those into account along with the sea level rise to draw a proper inference. So when that is done, so the plot at the bottom, you can see the corrected plot, and lo and behold, a consistent data all across the West Indies for a sudden sea level rise in 7,500 years plus minus 100 years, which has 5525 BCE in it. Okay, so that's very important. And these authors also made that connection that I mentioned at the beginning with the sudden formation of a Black Sea, based on 9 different parameters that was done by Ryan and Pittman, a geologist from Columbia University. All right. So I think that's it. Quick summary. Mahabharata war happened in 5561 BC, and Krishna's Dwarka was destroyed by rising seawater in 5525 BC. We find enormous archaeology evidence around the world that refers to a global phenomenon of a sudden sea level rise in 5525 BC. Now, we looked at West Indies evidence from West Indies, impressive evidence from 7 different locations for sudden sea level rise in 5525 BC. One additional insight. Now, I am just mentioning it to you. This applies everywhere in any oceanography study, is that we must analyze not only the sea level rise, but also the land subsidence. And when I say subsidence, I'm saying both in a positive and negative direction. Usually subsidence will be taken as like land dropping, from a near ocean and so on or otherwise. But I'm taking this in a positive, negative way, because land actually pops up in some places too, and we have evidence of that. We will see that evidence on the west coast of India at some point. So no other claimed year, guys, other than 5525 BCE, okay, can match for the destruction of Krishna's Dwarka based on the scientific evidence. Oceanography, climatology, geology, geophysics, geochemistry, sedimentology, okay, the formation of deltas and whatnot. Okay, Great Barrier Reef, we will see that. No other date can corroborate this evidence. That's all I have. I will see you shortly in another session of Dr. No Shorts. Namaskar.